All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Dr. Robert Glover. Dr. Glover is a relationship expert with over 40 years of professional experience. He's the author of 4 books, including the groundbreaking No More Mr. Nice Guy, and he's the founder of Integration Nation, an international community for men. And in this interview, we break down why being nice isn't the goal you should aim for, and how to be true to yourself and live life as the real you. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm a massive fan of your book. I've got a copy and I've got the audiobook myself. I find it quite a difficult listen at times because it opens up that kind of avenue of the work that we need to do, and it kind of allows you to see where you're going wrong and giving teaching. But how would you explain who you are and why you're helping so many people?
Explain who I am. Okay. I'm Robert, so nice to meet all you guys. And I live in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, originally from Seattle area in Washington State in the U.S. My background is I have degrees in religion and ministry. I also have a doctorate in marriage and family therapy, and I was a minister for 8 years in another lifetime, really long time ago. And that's my dog Nala barking right outside my office door. There's somebody outside that she gets excited about when people come around outside. So she'll quit barking in a minute. And I started working on my own self, my own work, 30-something years ago when my then wife said to me, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not. I don't trust you. You can be mean. You can be passive aggressive. You embarrass me in public. You don't follow through. And she goes, you need help. And I thought, well, you're the one who's unhappy all the time, but okay, to make you happy, I'll go get help. Luckily, I landed in some good places. I landed in a 12-step group for sex addiction, found out I wasn't a sex addict, but for the first time in my life, just started revealing myself. And, as you and I were kind of chatting, that's so challenging for most men to be vulnerable, to take the risk of showing somebody, who am I? What am I struggling with? Where am I afraid? What's not working well in my life? We tend to keep that hidden and secret. I did. And so I landed in a group. I got with a therapist. I later joined a men's group I was with for several years that worked around sexual shame. And then I started noticing men coming to me for therapy with their wives and girlfriends were saying the same things I was. I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. I give her everything she wants. She's never happy. It's never good enough. When's it going to be my turn? And she never wants to have sex anymore. So I thought, they're like me. So I started a No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group about 30 years ago, started writing just kind of little lessons about stuff I was learning about me. And I was starting to learn about nice guys in general. And nobody had ever written about nice guys at that time. There was just nothing out there for, these passively pleasing men that want to make everybody happy and yet are unhappy themselves. So about 6-7 years to write No More Mr. Nice Guy, another 3 years to get it published. A lot of editors said, Robert, we like your book, but our marketing department says men won't buy a self-help book. Well, that was before interview, podcast, Amazon. You see a book and you hear a book in a podcast, you go on Amazon, click it. Amazon said, people who bought this book and this book. And guys buy books. So that's 20 plus years ago that No More Mr. Nice Guy came out. And to this day, I'm still working with men. I love working with men, still working on myself, still, finding new and interesting challenges in life. And so that's my story. That's who I am. That brought you up to date, for the last 40 years to today.
I like it because it's definitely something that we're taught as adults, and as you grow from from boyhood to manhood, to go out to be the nice guy. Don't upset anybody. Fit in. Just be well behaved. Show respect, etc. But everybody misunderstands the title of the book. That it's not nice guy in that sense. There's more sort of sinister undertones to the nice guy. What what is it about being a nice guy? I know you're probably fed up answering this question, but what is it that?
I've never been asked that question before. Never been asked, who am I and what's a nice guy? Yeah, even if I'm kind of talking about who am I, I'm thinking, yeah, how many podcasts have I talked about that on before? And I thought, people watch very many of my interviews. You're going to hear a lot of the same things, which I know is true. The nice guy thing. Yeah, the title is kind of an interesting paradox. Number one is that, people might pick up the book and say, what's this, a book teaching men to be not nice? There's already enough not nice men out there. And, that's a typical interpretation. And then another interpretation is, what's wrong with being a nice guy? I would have asked you the same thing 35 years ago. I would have told you, I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And I thought that was a good thing. I was trying to be different from my father because my mother raised me to be different from my father. So I thought that made me a better person. I'm not selfish or narcissistic or angry or controlling. I'm trying to be different than all the quote bad men I've heard women complain about. Oh, men, they just want one thing. Back in the day, it wasn't toxic masculinity, but there was the same message during the angry feminism of 60s and 70s that I grew up with. Yeah, every man's a rapist. An erection's a sign of aggression. It's just all this, don't be that guy, right? So, and I grew up in a fundamental Christian church. Be a good man, be kind, be caring, be gentle, be passive. Don't be selfish. Don't put yourself first. Don't rock the boat, and repress your sexuality. That was a big part of it too. Hide your sexuality. Sex is bad. Sex is dirty, evil, and sinful. So save it for the one you love. That paradox seemed to be lost on most people. So, the whole nice guy thing is, a nice guy is a guy who is trying to do two things: become what he thinks other people want him to be, so he'll be liked and loved and get his needs met. So he's very chameleon, kind of like, lick your finger, hold it up, see which way the wind's blowing. Okay, I'll be that. I'll do that. I'll look like that. I'll behave in this way, perform in this way. Then I'll be liked and loved, and I'll get my needs met. The second thing that a nice guy is trying to do is hide anything about him that might get a negative reaction. So if I do something and you frown or you scowl or you get angry or you walk away from me, oh, that was wrong. I did the wrong thing. And so nice guys end up hiding a lot. Their needs, their wants, their opinions, their feelings is a big one, and their sexuality is huge. Because we think, oh, if somebody sees that I'm a sexual guy, or that they know that I look at porn, or I'm turned on by young, attractive women. Oh, no, people will think I'm disgusting. So nice guys are walking through life, in a sense, by being really inauthentic. You can't really trust a nice guy. Who is he really? What does he really think? What does he really feel? What does he really want? What's he really up to? You don't know. And so that makes it really challenging to be in a relationship with a nice guy. He won't say what he wants. He won't set a boundary. He won't ask for it. It's just, and nice guys lie a lot. We tend to think a nice guy wouldn't tell lies. But if you're trying to become what you think everybody wants you to be and hide anything and get a negative reaction, you actually have a little lie coach in your head that says, tell it this way, or leave that part out, or misdirect their attention, or bring up that good thing that you did, or just, look like you don't know what they're talking about when they say it. That lie coach is coaching us all the friggin' time. Okay, that's not a nice guy, right? That's not a nice human being that's constantly thinking of what lies do I need to tell in order to go along and not get in trouble, not have consequences, not have anybody mad at me, not have anybody leave me. And all of those often add up to nice guys really not being their true selves, not asking for what they want, not expressing themselves. And then they use something called covert contracts, which we can talk more about. It's a giving to get. And nice guys, because of all these patterns, often end up being pretty resentful. and passive aggressive. And passive aggressive just means indirect, roundabout, unconscious expressions of anger. We can actually be out and out mean. When we don't get what we want or get our feelings hurt, we can be pretty hurtful to the people around us, all the while thinking I'm a really nice guy. So there's a lot of pieces, especially in interpersonal relationships. But another big piece is nice guys often are huge underachievers. We often fail to live up to our full potential for various reasons, either because being successful will put us in the spotlight and we'll be too visible and people might criticize us or have a higher standard for us. We think we might make other people feel bad if we're too successful, or we'll maybe, rise too much above the family standard we grew up with. And that will, make our family, oh, who do you think you are? That kind of thing. So, and we get so caught up in codependent relationships, fixing other people, helping other people, solving other people's problems, that has a real good distraction from taking good care of us, solving our own problems, living up to our full potential. So these are just, a clump of the things of what the problem is with being a nice guy. And as you know, I dive into these very early in the book, probably first, second chapter. I start talking about what's wrong with being a nice guy, because I want to establish up front, not that nice guys are bad or wrong or evil or anything like that. I'm a recovering nice guy. But just to kind of be the big stick upside the head, all the while we think we're being nice and building up credit in the bank for being all our nice credits. Nobody should ever get mad at us, leave us, call us out. People should like us. Those things actually make us not nice.
Because it's amazing. Because I like to listen to the audiobooks, and I kept feeling myself stutter. Like when I was walking, I would sort of, and then I would stop and go, "Oh my God, that really hit home." And there were so many things that just kept opening up about why I'm attracted to certain people, because I try to fix them rather than try to fix myself. Why I self-sabotage, because I don't want anybody to have an opinion that maybe I'm not as perfect as the image I want to portray. And it was just one thing after another. But one thing you really hit home in the book is about how the relationship with your father dictates how you're going to be as a man yourself. Do you think this is the problem now, that we have a generation of men that are, led by mothers, OnlyFans, porn, social media? So we're now playing a character to try fit in because we don't have a male role model, or we don't understand how to be masculine. So we allow others to dictate the journey we should go on.
To answer your question, yeah, all that true. When I started working with men that I call nice guys, so 30 plus years ago, most, at that time I was probably my late 30s. I'm late 60s now. So, 30s. And most of the men I worked with were probably around my age in the U.S., what we might call baby boomers, men that were born after World War II. And I've quickly found out that every nice guy had their own story. We often had a number of similarities, but we weren't all the same, and we didn't all have the same story. At first, I thought, well, all these other nice guys out there are probably just like me. And I found out they weren't. So our stories with our fathers can be varied. Back in those times, 25, 30 years ago, the most common stories I heard was father was either absent, he'd left, divorced the son's mother. The boy never saw his father, or absent because he worked a lot or traveled a lot and just wasn't there around the family. I heard stories of fathers that kind of fit more with my father's story, maybe that they were angry or maybe addictive or maybe abusive to the children or the boy's mom. And so I heard a lot of that. And a few of the guys, basically said, well, I grew up in a Leave It to Beaver family, but, they didn't really ever know their dad, and they didn't really have a depth of connection with their dad. Now, nowadays, when I listen to younger men, whether this is millennials, Generation Z, a lot of them are telling me, oh, my dad was a nice guy. And it makes sense. My son just turned 39 2 days ago, and his father, he's a millennial, was a nice guy, me, right? And what a lot of the young men I hear say, all my father taught me was, don't piss off your mother. I mean, that was kind of the rule, because dad was walking around on eggshells, not trying to piss off the kid's mother. And that's how I was when my son was young, of course, as well. And I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy when my son and stepson were, teenagers, between about, probably 12 and 18 years old is when I was writing the book and really doing my own work. So at least my son got to grow up with an evolving, recovering nice guy father. But I know that I'm sure that still had an impact on him, that just don't upset your mother. What was kind of the key message.
Because that was something that really hit home, was when you talk in the book about your relationship with your mother, that that they tend to bond with their mother, and it's almost like they can't let anybody else into that, so they sabotage relationships, that they're always going to be connected to their mom and stuff like. There was so much that opened my eyes to kind of, whoa, I don't have a good relationship with my dad. That I'm resenting him for this, that I've been brought up by my mom. She would teach me how to put up shelves and things like that. But how much of that, men are taught to be the strong, silent type, to fix problems ourselves. But now we have a generation who are going to therapy, they're discussing their problems. At what point does it become good to talk? And because you see in the book how a lot of guys come in to moan about the other person, never accepting responsibility on themselves. So when does it become good to talk and discuss our feelings, etc., but then switching to the bad version of, rose tinted and being manipulative and power hungry, and where's that balance between the two, do you think?
Well, I'm actually not a big fan of finding balance between two toxic extremes. There's not a balance there. It's a contradiction of terms. So, but that's the thing about us men. We often go, well, okay, I don't want to be this, but I don't want to be this. Where's the balance? We'll go, okay, what's the tipping point between those two extremes? I don't know. And so, but it's not going to be any healthier. So I'm not sure balance is the answer we're often looking for, even though most of the men I talk to really like that word a lot. Balance. I got to find balance. Honestly, most of the highly successful people I've known in life were pretty out of balance. I'm not sure. There's some things that, I don't want to get too far out of balance on, but I think I also have to be willing to get way out of balance on certain things if I really want to, hit it out of the park. If I really want to, to make a big mark of some way. So there's probably 4 or 5 questions in that question that you asked just now.
I have a habit of that.
I have it. Yeah, you're not the only one. Believe me, I'm a professional at listening to the multiple questions and trying to pull them out and see if I can remember what they all are by the time I finish answering the question. So I believe that vulnerability is huge. I think it's extremely important for people's happiness, mental health, self-esteem, living up to their full potential. What happens is, yes, culturally, we do kind of discourage men from being vulnerable. Look like you know what you're doing. Look like you're competent. If you don't know what you're doing, don't try, because you don't want to embarrass yourself. And so that's really it's limiting in a lot of ways. So we don't try new things. We don't take risks. We don't step out of our comfort zone. We don't accept mentoring, coaching, assistance, criticism even, because that makes us feel like, oh, somebody's seen that I'm not good enough. I'm defective. I'm bad. I'm whatever. Our core. We all have different core messages around that. But for me, one of the most powerful experiences I mentioned when I went to that 12-step group for sex addiction. For the first time in my life, I started being vulnerable. I started revealing me, telling things I'd never told anybody before, things I never even really wanted to look at. And, the most powerful response I ever got was, thanks for sharing, Robert. And I got into therapy and started revealing. And my therapist would just look kindly and say, well, let's explore what that's about. And I was in a men's group, and we dove into sexual shame. So we're sharing kind of the deep, dark stuff most people don't ever get around to sharing. And then when I realized nobody rejected me, nobody thought I was evil, nobody attacked me, and that actually found out I was actually pretty normal, maybe pretty tame, actually. And so that was so powerful to have that vulnerability. And for example, I do workshops, a few times a year. I'll do a workshop here in my office, usually about 8-10 guys. I've started a men's program. It's an international program called Integration Nation. I've been working with men, like I said, for 30 plus years. And what I found that if you can give men a safe place to just tell their story, talk about them, that is contagious and that other men then open up and want to reveal. And that becomes the basis of how we develop depth of genuine connection with other people, how we escape this loneliness trap that so many men are in today, how we break out of our hidden addictions that we don't ever let anybody take a look at, how we break out of all the fucking time wasters we have, social media, scrolling YouTube, doom scrolling Instagram, surfing for porn. We start revealing that stuff and take that risk and feel vulnerable. And we find out people accept us and like us and maybe even like us more because they actually know who we are. We're not just some Teflon front. And now we have friendships and connections. And now that I have friendships and connections, I'm not surfing so much porn. I'm not on Instagram so much. I'm not, wasting time looking at YouTube videos. All of a sudden, life starts to change because of that vulnerability. Now, with that said, I'm a therapist by training, and I often say, I know this sounds strange coming from a therapist, but feelings are overrated, and talking about feelings is even more overrated. Because I know what a lot of people do, maybe what we think of as in therapy, is just talking on and on and on about how I feel. Well, I feel really sad about this, or I feel really hurt about this. And I think it's a good idea to be connected and in touch with our feelings. But I think when we talk about feelings, we're talking more about a visceral response: sad, mad, glad. And I think it's good to be able to access all of those feelings, because if we can't feel sad or mad, we can't feel glad. And if we can't feel glad, we can't feel sad or mad. They're all very important feelings. But most of the time when people are talking about feelings, they're actually talking about their mental perceptions of things, not feelings. Right? And often when people say, I feel like, well, they're not actually describing a feeling. They're describing a thought process usually. I had one client, a female client, that used to come to see me with her husband, and her husband was in a men's group that I led. And she would begin almost every sentence with, I feel like. And finally, I said to her, I don't usually do this with women. I can do this with men. But I said, listen, if you say I feel like, the next time you say I feel like, you have to get down on the floor and either give me 5 push-ups or 5 crunches. And she agreed. And so she said, I feel like. And so she did. She got down and gave me 5 push-ups. And it took a little bit. And then I remember one time they brought their daughter to the therapy session because they couldn't find a babysitter. And the daughter was like 4 or 5 years old. And so the daughter got down on the floor with her mother and did crunches and push-ups every time the mother said, I feel like. So a lot of when men do express feelings, a lot of times actually what they're doing is puking out their victim state. Like, they'll come to a men's group or they'll come into therapy. And back when I was like working a lot with men in private practice and had 5 men's groups a week that I was leading back when I was living in Seattle, a guy would come into a group or come into therapy, usually in a group, and he'd be complaining about his wife or his girlfriend or complaining about his boss or complaining about this. And I said, okay, you get 2 sessions to complain, whine, be the victim. This is session number 1. Next week, you can come complain and whine and gripe and be a victim again. Then, no more. From then on out, we're addressing what are the issues within your power to act on and resolve, because there's no more playing the victim. So again, a lot of times when people kind of get into quote their feeling work, they're just kind of rehashing their mental constructs of things that have happened to them. They're not really in their feelings. Now, I'm a big fan of feelings. Feelings make us feel alive. But typically, we don't have to talk about our feelings, but it is helpful to actually feel them and know what it is we're feeling. A lot of people don't. For example, when I was working with couples, I'd have a lot of couples come to me, and the woman would be saying, I don't know what my husband's feeling. I don't know what's going on inside him. I don't know what he's thinking. I can't really ever tell. I feel so alone because he just, won't open up to me. And I can't tell you how many times in a couple's session, kind of the woman sitting on the couch, kind of talking away, and the man starts to tear up. I can see it. I've learned to recognize, the getting misty-eyed.
Yeah.
Not just sobbing or bawling, but he's tearing up. And the woman's just yakking and talking while he's sitting right next to her, having feelings. And I'll interrupt the woman and I'll say, look at your husband's eyes. And, she has to kind of reorient because she's in her head yakking at me about something. She looks at him and I said, what do you see? Oh, he's crying. He's got tears in his eyes. Go, yeah. I said, he's been sitting right next to you, having feelings, and you didn't even notice, but yet your major complaint of him is you don't know what he's feeling. You don't know what's going on inside of him. I said, maybe the problem is not so much he doesn't have feelings, but you're not paying attention to them. And that's always I don't take the big stick upside the women's head very often. I do it with men. But that's kind of about as big a stick as I can get is telling the woman, he's having feelings. Do you really want to know what he's feeling? Do you really want to see him as a feeling human being? Or do you want to sit and complain about the fact that he never has feelings? So feelings are meant to be felt. They're meant to be an alarm system that wakes us up to something. That just says, pay attention. That's all. They don't need to be going off all the time, just like we don't need our alarm clock going off. But when they do go off, we should pay attention. Sometimes it does help to talk to somebody if we don't know what the feeling means or what it's about. That can be helpful. But again, most of the time when people kind of go in and they're just kind of victim puking out, all this stuff and just regurgitating, all the stuff they've been ruminating about, that's not really doing feeling work, in my opinion.
No. No, I definitely agree with that, because when I did talk therapy years ago, it was fine at the start, and then you just kept that victim mentality up by talking about it, going round and round the houses. There was never any action. It's only when I started doing CBT and actually taking action, I noticed a difference. And that's what I liked about your book, was that you got the reader to actually identify and challenge their behaviors. I think it was Carl that you mentioned, where you were on about using his car for the external validation. How he would always use it.
Always had to be super clean, and his daughter always had to be really cute, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm exactly like that, but I'm being the joker, so I'll make silly jokes. And it was when you were talking about that couple just now, I was thinking about times where I've analysed what to say and how to say it, and how to, rewriting things in my head before I would speak. Whereas I would see colleagues who are female who just feel it and just say as they thought. And it made me realize it's like how much of a character I play in a lot of roles in my life. And I'm now at the point of kind of, where does the nice guy or this version of this character of myself end, and where do I begin? And I think that's the problem, is a lot of guys, it's the paradigm, they don't know that they're just following their programming. When do the guys start coming to you? Do you see, is it after divorces, after losses? Is it that what's the event that kind of pushes them into working with you, do you think?
All right. Can we come back to that question?
Mm-hmm.
Can we back up just a little bit and talk about your feelings? You want to do that? A little free therapy here? All right. Yeah. Your voice went up in pitch. Yeah. Let's talk about my feelings on my podcast.
I think a lot of that is, I've spent a lot of the last few months trying to work on myself, and I'm challenging behaviors and stuff, and I'm coming to a transition of a job ending, and it's that moment of, who am I? Where do I fit? What am I? I've not got the kids, I've not got the marriage that I expected. So I'm now at that stage of, society says I should be this, but I'm actually this. You know what I mean? And
let's back up even further. I'm not going to poke too much, I promise.
No, go for it.
back when you said two things. You said you have a tendency to be the joker, to kind of start telling jokes in certain situations. I do too. I realize that in certain situations when my anxiety state goes up, a new or novel situation, I'll kind of get jokey, right? Another piece you said is you have this tendency to kind of start overanalyzing, what should I say, or what should. If you and I were working together, right? If I was your coach, your therapist, I would actually take those two pieces of information. Those are valuable information, because you, like most of us, have been taught, Well, I say in No More Mr. Nice Guy, nice guys are uncomfortable with two kinds of feelings, our own and everybody else's, right? Because feelings represent out of control, the unknown. Yeah, I might get hit. I might get spanked. I might get scolded. I might get ignored for having feelings, right? That's painful. If you're a little
Mhm.
child and you're having a feeling and nobody gives a fuck, nobody notices, that's painful. So you learn, oh, I don't want to go there. That hurts too much. So we all learn, all of us, we all learn do things to distract ourselves from our feelings. Even talking about feelings can be a distraction from feeling our feelings, right?
Yeah.
So if we have a little picture of ourselves, know ourselves well enough to know when we are distracting ourselves from uncomfortable feelings. And for some of us, all feelings are uncomfortable. A lot of guys I work with are uncomfortable being happy. Oh no, this feels weird. I can't walk around being happy. It might make my girlfriend feel bad because she's unhappy all the time. And if I'm happy, that's not. So even that sad, mad, and glad, even the glad part might make us uncomfortable to feel. But if we know what we do to avoid feelings, like maybe seeming really intelligent and smart to avoid feelings, maybe being the joker to avoid feelings, maybe, being bravado or trying to make a good impression to avoid feelings, or maybe clamming up and not talking at all to avoid feelings. Maybe, there's various ways we all can do it. So, what I would say to you, for example, if we were working together, I'd say, okay, next time you notice the clown in you's come out, the jokers come out. And if you can be the noticer of that, especially with no judgment, just notice, oh, I'm joking and I'm joking a little too much and trying a little too hard, right? Notice that without judgment. And then you can just get curious. I wonder what I'm avoiding. I wonder I wonder what I'm feeling, right? Now, this is not being overly analytical. It's just being curious.
Mhm.
Hmm. I think I'm just uncomfortable in a new situation with people I don't know. That may be all that it is, right? It's often things like that. I'm anxious. And mostly the two things you'll probably find is you're either probably dealing with anxiety or shame. Shame is an internalized emotional sense that I'm not good enough. I'm not okay. I'm going to be found out. I'm bad. And anxiety is just, oh no, what if I do something and something bad happens? What if I get embarrassed? What if somebody doesn't like me? What if I look foolish? What if, I get shot down? What if? So you can pay attention to those behaviors that you tend to run when you're having uncomfortable feelings. And again, often the time those uncomfortable feelings are either shame or anxiety. I had a guy named Dr. Robert Augustus Masters who wrote a book called To Be a Man on my men's program about a month ago. And he said shame, toxic shame, is the most uncomfortable feeling men have. And I know that's true for me. Even though I've worked on my shame and become very open and very vulnerable, you probably have watched enough interviews with me. I talk about anything and everything about myself. I got no secrets from the world. They're all out there. But even little things, I noticed. I was on an interview last week, and it was maybe one of those days where I had 3 interviews in a day. And about 15 minutes into maybe a 90-minute interview, I thought, I gotta go pee. I need to pee. And then I thought, well, I can't just stop the interview right now and say, I gotta go take a pee. Now, actually, I'm pretty good at doing that when I need to, but it's kind of an interview. So I'm thinking, oh, I think I can hold it. I think I'll be okay. And it wasn't until the interview was over that I realized I had shame about just saying, I got to take a piss. I'll be right back. And so I managed that by just doing whatever I had to do to get through, the interview.
Yeah.
So that was shame that, oh no, somebody will think badly of me, or I'll be a burden to somebody, or I'll be disruptive in some way. And it took me a good 45 minutes after the interview ended to even realize, oh, I had shame about needing to take a pee 15 minutes into an interview. So that's shame. And I repressed it. So like everybody else, I tended to, override it in some way. Okay. So be the noticer of that when you get too analytical about stuff. Might even just ask yourself, what do I feel? Or if you're being kind of the joker, being funny, or, being clever or distracting, go, what's up? What's going on with me right now? Now, again, I know a lot of people that do, quote, feeling work specialists. They'll say, all right, where do you feel it in your body? What color is it? Whenever people do those routines with me, I go, that's a poor excuse for therapy. You learn that in a workshop somewhere to ask the person, what color is it? Just notice. And a pretty good guess is, something that's triggered your fight, flight, freeze mechanism. So it's probably either shame or anxiety or fear, right? And, those are pretty good guesses. Probably you're not being the joker because you're glad. And you might be because you're sad, but it's probably more around fear or shame or anxiety. So these are just those little clues you can pay attention to do your feeling work. And then if you want to tell someone about that, tell it to your friend, tell it to your partner, tell it to your therapist. Hey, I discovered something about myself. When I'm in that jokey place, it's because I'm feeling an uncomfortable emotion. Now, if you tell this to your partner, your girlfriend, your wife, now the vulnerability we have is, oh, fuck, now she knows me. Now she'll call me out when I'm being the joker, and I won't be able to hide behind that anymore. So that's why it's actually, I think, healthy to tell our partners this stuff, because that requires another level of vulnerability of us getting out of our comfort zone and taking a risk, because that's what vulnerability is. It's taking the risk that somebody will see us. And again, nice guys, we're trying so hard to become what we think people want us to be and hide anything we think might get rejected or have a negative consequence. So this is such a powerful way of breaking out of those nice guy patterns, is finding safe people, a coach, a therapist, a men's group, a 12-step group, a minister, a rabbi, a best friend, and start risking opening up and telling things that you're uncomfortable telling about yourself. And then we can learn to just start doing that within ourselves pretty easily.
That makes a lot of sense, because when you were discussing about the using a joker to kind of navigate through anxiety, I could think of some events where it was popping in my head where I stopped going to jiu-jitsu because I was not as good as I wanted to be, or that a colleague of mine left and I was going to have to train with people who I had no idea, didn't know anybody. And suddenly, instead of having a fail-safe person, a safe person to train with, I was like, oh no, I might have to be shown up by new people. I don't know how to connect with men anymore. I went out for a night out a few weeks back, and when I realized like how much I tried to control the scenario by how very analytical the questions I write are, rather than just letting interviews flow, for example. I went out for a night out the other day, and we were sitting a bunch of us, and they said, oh, why are you not going back? Or what about you going to? I think it was, why am I not going backpacking or something around the world with the money I'm going to get off in this payoff? And I said, oh no, I could never do that. I've got really bad social anxiety. And they said, what? I would never have said you've got social anxiety. You're on a podcast, you're up speaking to 30, 40, 80 odd students at a time. And I think you're talking at your arse, like making a joke of it. And these were friends I knew from work. And it was that moment of, I think it really hit home. Was it the Japanese saying? You have a face for your family and friends. You have a face for the public, and then you have a face for who you actually are. That part of you that you never let out to people. And I think that's when it really hit home of, people see me completely different than I personally see myself. I self-sabotage. I'm a perfectionist. I will struggle to speak out. And if I think I'm going wrong, I will take criticism like you brought a knife to, and deep down in the spine. Are these the kind of behaviors that you see? The kind of
You sound normal. You sound like all the guys that I work, because like guys will say to me, Robert, if I could just be so confident like you are, I could accomplish all the kinds of things you've accomplished. And I go, I'm actually not that confident of a guy. And they go, oh yeah, but okay, look, how many interviews? I mean, sometimes a couple weeks ago, I did 11 interviews in a week. I've been doing interviews for years, right? Mm-hmm. I've interviewed with some pretty big names, Bill O'Reilly, Geraldo, Dick Clark. I mean, I don't know if you know any of them, but I've interviewed with big name people, for years. So I've done it a lot. I do Q&A calls all the time. I'm in my zone of kind of safety and genius and expertise. Put me at a party where I don't know anybody, and all of a sudden, I don't come across quite the same way. All right. So we all have these kind of vulnerabilities. We all have our insecurities. And of course, we're all doing our best to, hide them from ourselves and hide them from people we know. I mean, we're all doing that. And that's the beauty that I love about, if you came over here to Puerto Vallarta, to Mexico for a weekend workshop, and you're in here with 7, 8 other guys, everything you just shared about yourself, Friday night, it's all just, why'd we come here? What do we want to get out of the workshop? What's going on in our life? Everything you just shared, those few minutes right there, everybody'd go, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I do that. I can relate to that. And other guys would share stuff. You go, oh yeah, I get that. I relate to that. And that's such a gift. Lately I've been referring to it. It's the secret sauce. It's just that magic ingredient that helps men blossom, level up to the best version of themselves, start living that good life that used to be a fantasy. It's not near as complicated as we think. We think it, comes from thousands of hours of reading self-help books or watching, YouTube videos that tell you how to do this or do that or do that. I mean, how many videos do you need to watch to learn how to get strong pecs? Or, how many videos do you need to watch to learn how to approach a woman? I tell guys, you probably have enough information to take bold action in your life right now. But gathering more information is a lot easier than taking bold action. So
Feels
I'll give them
safer,
more
doesn't it?
information. Oh, it is safer, right? Bold action is scary. It's
It feels
risky.
like you're doing something, and doesn't it?
Yeah, it's an illusion of doing something, but it's not. So when guys get together and open up and say, "I'm scared," or I have social anxiety, or I spend too much time looking at porn, or my marriage just sucks. When they get together, not in that complaining, I'm a victim, but just real, like, this is where I hurt. This is where things aren't going well in my life. That is the secret sauce where men open up to other men, be supported by men, be held by men, be encouraged by men, be held accountable by men. All of those things is what allows us to start leveling up and changing the situations that we're in. Because the way I look at it, our ancestors, our male ancestors, all spent the majority of their lifetime around men. Very little time around women. I know this probably seems strange, but men spending significant amount of time with women, even a girlfriend or a wife, has not been the norm other than maybe for the last 60 years, since World War II, really. Because in World War II, men went off to fight this great war, and somebody needed to build the bombs and the airplanes and be the nurses and basically keep the war machine running. That was the women. They most of the time they'd been in the home taking care of kids. The guys were out in the fields or in the factories doing what they did. Very little time spent, even with your partner. Now all of a sudden, men and women were working together in the same workplace. War ends, men come back. Many of the women went back to being homemakers, but many stayed in the workplace. Feminism comes along. Now more women get degrees than men, and there's probably more women being successful in the workplace than men are. I'm not saying that any of that's good, bad, right, or wrong, or we need to revert back to anything. All I'm saying is that throughout all of human history, except since about the last 60 years, men spent most of their time with men. And that's where we learned how to work as a team, is where we got, through men kidding each other, teasing each other, busting each other's balls, lifting each other up, pulling each other through, cutting each other down. All those things that we men do with each other is to sharpen us and give us a band of brothers and help us live at our very best and do our very best job at things. Nowadays, we don't have that. Right? Men hang out. I call it men hang out in the nursery. A guy, I don't even know if a guy even has to have a job anymore. Most men, can kind of get by, so they got their smartphone. They can look at porn. They don't have to talk to, a woman. They don't have to be in a relationship. They can watch, they can binge on Netflix. They can surf the internet for shit they don't need. Like I said, they can waste hours on Instagram and YouTube. They can smoke a lot of dope, drink a lot, go do a lot of plant medicine, whatever it is that they do to distract themselves from actually fucking getting out in the world and living up to their full potential, living with purpose, living with passion. I'm not being judgmental. I love men. I love working with men. But it is so easy now just to sit and let information get pushed at you, on your phone, that why would you go do anything if it's easy? I just get pushed, look at all this great information getting pushed to me on YouTube. Look at all these hot women on Instagram. Look at all this great porn I can look at. Why would we get out and do anything? So I think we men need that vulnerability with other men for men to be able to say, hey, Robert, hey, Ian, you're kind of wasting your life. Hey, doom scrolling on Instagram. What's that getting you? Spending 2 or 3 hours hiding away looking at porn. How's that working out so far? And it with love and support to actually level up, because that's when we get happy, right? Those feeling states again, happy. For men, we get happy, I believe, when we have the depth of love and connection with other men. I don't think women tend to make us happy. I mean, I'm talking about the heterosexual men. We think the right woman is going to make us happy. But I often ask men, think about your past relationships with women. This is not a criticism of women, by the way. It's a misperception we men have of women. I'll say, look at your past relationships. How many of them made you more happy than unhappy? And, if you go through every single relationship you've been in, at some point, they must have made you more unhappy than happy because you're not in them anymore.
Yeah.
Right? If they were making you more happy than happy, you'd probably still be in them, and so would the woman. Right? Now, this is true whether you're gay or straight. But we have this expectation that women are going to make us happy. But they don't. They really don't. I've been married 3 times. I've been a marriage therapist for 40 years. That's a false impression we put on women, that they're going to make us feel loved and whole and complete. I get those feelings from men. When I'm with men, that's where I feel loved and held and whole and complete. Because my guy friends don't love me 1 minute and then think I'm a jerk the next minute, or call me an asshole the next minute, or withdraw from me, or withhold their affection. Women do that to me. Men don't. So when we get this connection with men, really open up and trust men, find safe men we can be with. That's the secret sauce for most things. We just got to get out of our comfort zone. All right, I tell men, take the social media apps off your phone. Every man I tell that to, especially the younger he is, I say, take social media apps off your phone. Leave them on your desktop. If you want to look at them on your desktop. Look at them on Firefox browser so they're not tracking you. Get them off your phone. And guys go like, what would I do if I couldn't, scroll Instagram? I couldn't watch the YouTube videos. I couldn't swipe right for all those hotties on Tinder. What would I do if I couldn't look at the news? I couldn't read the sports. What would I do? I'm like that. I don't have social media on my phone, but yeah, I got the sports site, so I can look at my favorite ball team, and I'll look at the news, and it's just a distraction. Okay, so what can we do to get out there, get connected with men, get vulnerable with men, get supported by men, get held accountable by men, and actually start living our best life, living up to our full potential? And so that's, to me, the secret sauce. We need men in our life to go do that.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
Because I think there was a study, I'm trying to remember who did it, but it was something like 72% of the people who responded had said they barely had any male friends or had a best friend. They had no real connections outside of their wife, their kids, their job, or whatever it was. And I thought that was terrifying. And then I realized that I've just come 41 back in November, and suddenly I'm looking out, barely knowing anybody. I could probably count 5 people at work that I get on okay with. All the other people are married, kids, settled down. And suddenly you think, life's passed me by. This is the end of the world. What am I going to do? And you feel that tightening of the chest. You think like, oh, what's the point? And I can see why men tend to commit suicide more, because we haven't got that safe place to not even to vent, to be open. How, and the book you mentioned about how the importance of male friendships, the groups, etc. How do we find these safe people? People that you can be open, and how do we get over that initial, oh my fucking god, I can't say that. I've done this really bad thing in my past.
Yeah.
If I said I hit my wife, or I did this, or I did whatever it was, how do we get over that initial, even if it's good, but I'm terrified of my
Even
job.
bragging about ourselves, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
hey, I got the promotion, or hey, I lost that weight I've been trying. Yeah, we even hesitate to do that, right? So this is a good question. I'm glad you asked, because this is kind of really what I'm all about, is helping men find community, be in community with men, because I believe in it. I did the majority of my quote nice guy recovery work early on in men's groups, right? And whether it's 12-step group, whether it was just a men's therapy support group, um, I just, the studies you mentioned, there's probably multitudes of studies out there talk about how lonely and isolated men are. It does lead to deteriorating health. It does lead to shorter lifespan. It does lead to suicide, leads to addictions. It leads to all kinds of problems. And I was just reading last night an article in the Seattle newspaper online. I was on my phone reading news about a runners club up in Seattle that meets every Sunday, and it's a runners club for black men. And there's just black men get together, and it said it's not just about running; it's about their overall health and wellness. And like some of these black men were saying that, a black man running through some neighborhoods can get you shot. I go,
Yeah.
that's a shame. And but that's not my life experience. But I thought, you know, that would make a man, close down, right? And they said they get together and run as a group. I think there's like 400 of them in this runners club, and I don't know if there's all 400 of them on any given Sunday running through a park, 4-mile loop. And it said that they talk about their life, their work, their relationships, their struggles. They have camaraderie with people who understand. I thought, I want to go join that runners group, and I go, well, they're not going to let me in because I'm a white dude, but because I don't have their same shared experience of the world. But I thought, but I want that, right? I want that. Doesn't matter if it's a black runners club. There's somebody turned me on to a group in the UK a year or so ago. I'm going to get the name wrong, but it's something like Andy's Club. And it was,
That's what I was going to mention. There's one called, I think it's Shed Club as well, where retirees get together and they build stuff and they fix a lawnmower and they all sit and chat about their problems.
yeah, how
But
cool.
because they're fixing a problem, they're not focused on what will they think, what will they do. They just talk and be themselves. And I
Yeah,
think,
and
yeah,
that
I
that
think it's
that,
Andy's
that,
groups, the
that
other one.
Andy's some they meet like every Monday throughout the UK in small groups all over the UK. And I think they'll have a beer, just talk. But it was started when a guy named Andy committed suicide. And it was started by his mother and his best friend, who said if he'd had someone to talk about, he probably wouldn't have committed suicide. And when I saw this model that they're using, the guys that lead them, they go get a little bit of training from them. And, it's free. You just drop in and, get this connection with guys. So I'm just such a big advocate and a big fan of any way that men can find groups with other supportive men. And again, be real, be vulnerable, talk about what's real. And all it takes is one guy. If I'm in a workshop and one guy says, I spend way too much time looking at porn. Now all of a sudden, 4 or 5 other guys, me too, me too. They might not have ever said that if that one person hadn't. Now they can open up. They feel safe. I'm not going to get, people aren't going to look at me like I'm bad or a pervert. So I'm a believer in this. So like 7 years ago, I just married my wife. We'll come up on our 8th anniversary this November. She's Mexican. I'm living in Mexico. I'm learning Spanish because she doesn't speak English. And so I'm living in a foreign country, foreign culture, working at home. Everything I do here is in my home, in my house. Uh, I didn't have a lot of guy friends here. When I was single, living in a different part of town, I had more men that I knew. Most of them were gay because it's a very gay part of town. But I had guy friends there that, I'd connect with. And I was thinking, I have maybe one and a half good guy friends in my life. And I'm kind of struggling in my new marriage. I feel lonely. I feel isolated. And so I was leading a workshop. I think I was up in Seattle actually leading a workshop. And one of the guys in the workshop, I shared, I need a men's program. He said, I just joined this men's program with this guy who studied with David Data for 12 years. And we have these retreats. And I go, sign me up. I'm in. And I started working with that coach. I joined his program a few months later and did it for 5 years. And now I went from having maybe one and a half good guy friends in my life. I got 25 to 50 men I could call up, and in a heartbeat, they'd get on an airplane, fly down here, and be here for me. I didn't have that 6 years ago. And I tell you what, it's transformed my life. My life has changed. I'm in the best health of my life. I'm now as lean and fit as I've been in 25 years. I've launched a new company in the last year. My marriage has improved dramatically. I travel. My businesses are well. Financially, I'm doing well. Everything in my life has just multiplied since I joined a men's program 6+ years ago. Right. So I'm a believer of it. That's why I launch men's programs. I'm trying my best. That's why I launched Integration Nation. It's my men's program international where men from around the world can get on a program. Like today, every Thursday we've got a call. Right? I did it earlier today, my time. Every other Thursday it rotates time. So like today would have been a call people in Europe could have attended. Would have been early evening your time. And today I got to do an interview with a guy named Dr. Orion Taraban, who's got an interview called Psychax that I've been on. And he's really popular, just wrote a book called The Value of Others, talking about the sexual marketplace. And it was so much fun having him on that call and talking to him and having all these men on there and asking him questions. And, I just love building community for men because when I started my own journey, back when my ex-wife said to me, "You're not such a nice guy. You need help." There wasn't much out there. There was like the Robert Bly, Iron John, mythopoetic, go out in the woods, beat a drum, have a talking stick, and say ho. That's about all there was. Maybe there were a few more things, but that was fairly pre-internet. It just didn't exist. Now there's so many good books that have been written for men. Now there's so many men's coaches, so many, I get invited to a lot of interviews and usually I ask the interviewer, who's our audience? And they go, it's men 25 to 45 interested in health, personal development, entrepreneurship. But, it's kind of like the same gig. That shit didn't exist, even 15 years ago. And so now I'm so grateful that if a guy wants a connection, whether it's in that Andy's club, whether it's in a Black Runners club, whether it's in Integration Nation, whether it's, a local men's coach leading a weekly group, a meetup, there is so much out there. And some of it's better than others. But I tell guys, if you go to one thing and it just doesn't click, doesn't fit, don't just say, I tried that. I'm not going to ever, reach out and connect with men. There's so many different programs, so many different people, so many different skill sets, so many different layers of ability. Keep looking, because I promise you, I'm the happiest when I've got good men in my life. I'm the most productive when I have good men in my life. My marriage is its best when I have good men in my life. I used to tell couples that when they'd walk in my office for marriage therapy. I'd say the best gift you guys can give your marriage is have good same-sex friends. You need friends outside of your partner. And I tell men that a good relationship with a woman, with a partner, is built on good relationships with other men. That's the foundation of a good relationship. So, yeah, I'm preaching, but I'm just such a big believer in men having safe spaces with other conscious, growing, powerful, loving men. Is so transformative.
Because that's a big thing about that in your book. It really hits home the importance of connection with other men. Because when I actually looked at my life, because your book was just page after page, just was prompt that made me think, whoa. Every time I did one of your challenges, I thought, oh, fuck. You know, that's and that had waves of kind of resistance fighting, the kind of the soul opening part of it. You know, it was got, and I realized I'm at the bottom level of reading your book, whereas I need to go through a couple of journeys and just keep rereading the book to level up my understanding of it as much. How do we use that book to, because there's so much in it and there's so many amazing prompts and there's so much amazing understanding, but how do we use the book going forward as a kind of a starting tool? You know, because we can join the club, we can speak to our partners, but how do we start taking our power back? You know, how do we take away the blocks, the covert contracts, the you know, how do we stop being a soft male? I think you referred to this generation of males being led by nice guy fathers. How do we make sure that what we're doing is passing on for the next generation to make a better version?
Like I said, and I say this in No More Mr. Nice Guy. So I've been preaching this for 30 years. Go find safe people. Go find a coach. Go find a therapist. Go find a men's group. I'm such a fan of any kind of group. So yeah, I'm being a broken record. In terms of the book, in terms of just reading it, it's not a difficult read. It's not a hard read. Any number of people said, yeah, I read it in a day. You know, I read it in 2 days, you know, and now other people say it took me 3 years to read it because I'd read about 6 pages and put it down and couldn't come back to it for 6 more months. It is a challenging read in that if it hits home, it can be a pretty big baseball bat, a pretty big stick, you know, upside your head, or pretty big, saber right through your heart. So even though it's easy enough to just pick it up and read it in day and a half, whatever, depending on your reading skills, or listen to it, I'd suggest reading it once just to get the whole feel for it, or listen to it once. I get a lot more men listen nowadays than read. That's okay. So listen to it once. And by the way, for those of you that listen to it on an audio book, they can email me at robert@drglover.com, and I'll send you a PDF of the breaking free exercises, activities that are in there. There's, I don't remember, 56, I think, breaking free activities. So read through it all and then just kind of get the feel. Then maybe start reading it a second time, and really a lot more stuff will jump out at you that didn't jump out the first time because there was so much of it. And I've had so many books like that. I remember listening to The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Every time I listen to that on a road trip, I go, did I even listen to this before? It's like everything in this book is new. like I don't remember any of this. Or David Data's Way of the Superior Man. Every time I read it, I go, was that in there the last time I read it? I don't even remember that. So it can be, good to reread it, just let other stuff sink in. And then start working the breaking free activities. And they're all the way from just things you can do to observe yourself, something you can do in a few minutes, something that might take more time and energy. Like one of them is go take a trip to a foreign country by yourself where you've never been and maybe don't know the language, right? That's such a powerful way to get out of your comfort zone and go practice being you, because nobody knows you. You can be anybody. Just go be you, in this foreign country. Get out of that comfort zone and your anxiety management strategies that you're used to using. And so there's all kinds of different activities. And my suggestion is get a partner, get a buddy, get in a group, get somebody and work the exercises together and talk with each other about what you're experiencing. Because I say to nice guys all the time, you did not become a nice guy in social isolation. You're not going to break free from nice guy syndrome in social isolation. We guys, we really do. We want to just read the book, watch the video, listen to the audiobook and go, okay, I got it. I can change all this. Again, it goes back to we don't want to be vulnerable. We really don't want to be seen. But I really do think, again, that's the secret sauce. And it is the thing that will most challenge us. So don't just read this book by yourself and think you can break free from the nice guy syndrome. I wrote the book. I've been working on me for 30 years. I've been working with thousands of nice guys. I've been in my own men's programs. I still need support of other men. I've got a men's group that I've been in. I started it 7 years ago with 7 guys. We just had a call yesterday. We talk every other week. We've been doing so for 7 years. We're committed to be in this for life. When we started it, we said, let's do it for life. And so I still need these support systems because this stuff just keeps coming up in different layers and different ways and different manifestations. And so I need my brothers, I need my bros to help me do this. So I'd say do the breaking free exercises, but have at least one person that you're sharing it with. And you'd be surprised. I've had so many men tell me, they go, I've got a friend or two that I know are nice guys. And they'll say either, should I give them the book? Or they'll say, I gave them the book and they read it and they go, thank you, man. This saved my life. So oftentimes I've found guys start, in a sense, their own kind of little men's group by just giving the book to one, two, or three of their buddies that they think would benefit. And the buddies are now going, yeah, let's talk about this. This is good stuff. And there's just this natural thing that men do want to talk about this once they get once their eyes are opened to how their nice guy patterns have been existed and where they came from and how they're getting in the way, and they see there's a different way to do this stuff. They do want to talk to other men about it. So yeah, that's even just a great start right there. If you share the book with a friend or two, I have a guy say, last workshop I led down here, one guy who'd already been here before came back again with his brother and best friend. He brought them down here to come do the workshop. So you can start your own little group with just people you already know.
I love that idea. I'm definitely going to do that because there were so many times I would have this little prompt or this kind of understanding. And then as I listened to the ones about relationships with partners or other men, I would start seeing, oh, wait a minute here. Like that person's behavior is that. Or I can understand now where they came from when they did X, Y, or Z. How then do we, as we start making the changes, if we do fuck up and we make the slip, or if we do, how do we establish boundaries? How do we take the partner off the pedestal? Because you talk a lot in the book about if it's male or female partners, it doesn't matter. You have the guy that stayed with another guy because he tried to fix his alcoholism, but he knew that he couldn't. Female that she just treated him like vermin until he stood up for himself. And it was actually that he thought would scare her away was actually the thing that made her more attracted to him. How do we start creating this? Because there seems to be a balance between dealing with the toxic shame and creating, like going out and creating a new life for yourself. And a lot of guys will do all that, join the group in that. But how do we actually tackle that toxic shame and create these new setups to stop us falling? And what happens if we do fall?
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 or 5 questions in that question.
20.
The toxic shame. Yeah, toxic shame. I don't know of any other way to release toxic shame other than finding safe people. Could be a coach, could be a therapist, could be your minister, like I said, could be a men's group, 12-step group. But find safe people and take a risk. Share something about you're uncomfortable sharing. And that's how I started out. And then when I realized the people in those safe groups handled it well, they didn't judge me, they didn't shame me, and then they shared reciprocally their own shame. That's very powerful when somebody else shares their shame as well. And you go, okay, we may not all have the same story. We may not all have the same shame, but we all have shame. And I don't judge them, and they don't seem to judge me. So it's a great way to start releasing that. So again, we do need the safe people to do it. Now, in terms of the slips, the falling back, expect that's going to happen. Kind of part of our masculine perfectionism is, all right, I better get it right. I better get it right the first time. And I better not make that mistake again. But you know what? I tell people, this is as an example. I got a PhD in marriage and family therapy at 29 years old. I was already in my first marriage at that time. I've been married 3 times. I've had a number of other relationships that didn't end in marriage. And even with a PhD in marriage and family therapy, I bumbled my way through every relationship I've had. I mean, nobody's born being an expert on relationships. Some people get to view healthier relationships in childhood, and so it kind of sets them up to have healthier relationships. Most of us don't get to view a healthy relationship. And in some ways, especially early in life, if we get into relationships, getting into a good relationship is almost more luck than anything else. You just lucked into a person that you got along well with and you communicated with and you liked each other. That's a lot of luck. Now, I think there are ways to actually work at this and getting more conscious, but I found that most people don't get around to creating conscious relationships till they're maybe in their late 30s or 40s. It kind of takes a while to learn what you want and learn what you don't want. I've often said every new relationship I've ever gotten into showed me something new that I didn't know I didn't want in a relationship. You have to think about that one for a minute. But every relation, you think about your past relationships. You get into one relationship and it kind of unfolds and there's good things about it or you wouldn't have been there. But there was probably at least one thing that just was a killer. It made it impossible to live with that, be with that person. Well, you probably didn't see that coming. If you saw that thing coming, you would have said, no, there's that thing. I already know I can't deal with that.
I think it's when you said about machine dogs feeding on the scraps of love. I was kind of like, holy hell, that made me just think of about 3 relationships. I was like, fuck.
You're table dog. Yeah, I know. Okay, so let's say, your listeners, think of 3 relationships. Probably you get into one relationship, and as you get to know the person, you find out, oh, they clam up and don't talk to me when they're upset at me and have a problem. Well, I didn't see that coming, and now that I'm out of that relationship, I'll never settle for that one again. Well, you get into another relationship, and this person, maybe they don't clam up, but over time you find that they don't pay their bills or manage their money, and they hide that from you. You go, okay, I'm never going to do that one again. Then you find out you get in the next one, and this person, is critical and demeaning of you. And, you don't see that coming. And then you get into the next one, and this person, after, you've been having sex for a while, it totally dries up and it goes away. None of these things you didn't know in advance, you didn't want them in relationship. So almost every new relationship teaches you something new that you didn't know that you didn't want. But because you didn't already know you didn't want it, you didn't see it coming. And you kind of, go down that pathway, into that relationship until you figure out that doesn't work. Okay. So the point I was making, I bumbled my way through every relationship. We're not built for intimate, pair bonded, lifelong sexual relationships with the opposite sex. It's not in our human DNA, but we think we should be, so we keep trying to do it. So most of things in life we're not actually built to do. We have to be trained or taught how to do them well. And even after we've been trained or taught to do well, we can emotionally sabotage ourselves. We can get distracted. We can, our attention goes somewhere else and we slip and fall and go, how'd I get here again? Right? I've done that. And that's where you need a support system. I had an event in my life about 10 years ago where I slipped and fell. I engaged in an old typical behavior for me that I thought I'd overcome. I thought I'd gotten over. I had a relapse, and not only did I have a relapse, but I indulged it for a while, a few months, and then finally when I kind of woke up and started dealing with it, I thought, how did I get there? I thought I'd worked on that. I thought I'd resolved that. I hurt myself. I hurt other people. And I was talking with a buddy, and this good friend of mine, this is what friends are good for. And he's a psychologist as well. He said, Robert, you can be a dick, but you're not a dick. And he said, once you integrate those two things together, you'll have this figured out. And I go, oh, yeah, I can be a dick, but I'm not a dick. I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person, and I can do some hurtful things. I can do some unconscious things. I can accept both of those things about myself. So learning to accept all parts of ourselves is integration. And that's what I'm all about. It's teaching men to be integrated men, not hiding this stuff about ourselves, not trying to become this over here, but just taking everything about who we are, our light, our dark, our good, our bad, our spiritual, our material, our happy, our sad, bringing them all and integrating them together, saying, this is me. This is me. And showing that to the world and say, here I am. This is me. And you know what? That makes us really interesting people, as opposed to the Teflon men I talk about in No More Mr. Nice Guy. They go, I do everything right. I don't do anything wrong. I don't fuck up. Look at me, tell me how good I am. That's not at all interesting. It's not interesting to other men, and it surely isn't interesting to women. We men think, oh, I have to be perfect for a woman to like me and want to be with me. Now, women get with imperfect men all the time, and it's those imperfect rough edges that give people something to connect with. If you're smooth and Teflon, what's there to connect with there? So love and embrace your fuck ups. I tell guys, no more Mr. Nice Guy is not a chronicle of my successes. It's a record of my fuck ups. It's all the things I did that didn't work. And and that's okay. I used to joke a few years ago when I was single. I got good enough at dating that my client said, teach us what you're doing. I go, I'm not a dating coach, but I was having success, so I kind of figured out what I was doing, taught courses on it, and I've written 2 books on dating. But I joked, this was about 15 years ago, when I was single and going through a period with no girlfriend in my life. I'd say I'm a marriage therapist that's been divorced twice and a dating coach that doesn't have a girlfriend. And men are still lining up to pay me money. So apparently we don't have to get it all right or be perfect all the time, because I think men, maybe especially, are more trusting of the teacher that's fallen down and gotten back up again, who's made the mistakes and learned something of value from them, rather than the guy that just read it in a book or went to school or saw it in a YouTube video and now he's out there teaching it like he's an expert. Yeah, it was a sideline. People send me stuff all the time and go, this person's ripping off your stuff. Somebody just sent me a thing off X yesterday of somebody talking about emotional tension and listing a bunch of stuff. You go, they're ripping you off. And I go, okay. I guess that just says the status that I've risen to. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there that just go watch other YouTube videos and now they're coaches. Now they're going to, they got their click funnel. They're going to sell you a product. I think those people, we quickly see through them. But the person who's been at it, who stumbled and fallen and gotten back up again and learned from it, I trust that person. They got something to teach me. So kind of going back to your question, I think we have to work at not being judgmental of ourselves for not being perfect. Let's embrace our faults. There's no mistakes, only learning experiences. And I think if we live that way, we're going to learn a lot. We're going to get our advanced degree in the school of life. But it comes from making the mistakes more often than it comes from getting things right.
I love that. It's partly why I made the podcast. I was so fed up of hearing all these gurus talk about the airy-fairy fixes and magical things that they had never actually done themselves. And I just wanted a podcast where somebody and came along and said, I'm an average guy, try to get better relationships, try to get better at X, Y, whatever it was. And I don't know how to do it. I'm going to ask some people. And that I thought, there isn't a podcast. I'll create one. And too many times I listen to these videos and I go, they've never had a mental health problem. They've never had anxiety. Because it's just the same advice, but with just a different name at the top. Like, how many interviews have you done for the book where you could literally change the name at the top of the podcast and they ask you the same questions over and over again? They don't ask you about you.
I never get asked the same questions. I actually don't watch a lot of interviews or podcasts. Up until maybe 6 or 8 months ago, I probably didn't watch any, just because I don't know, I'm busy. I'm doing stuff. But guys would say, "Have you ever watched this podcast? You ever seen this one? Ever seen?" It's kind of funny because you mentioned seeing me on Chris Williamson. About 6 months ago, about 3 different people said, "Robert, you should get on the Chris Williamson Modern Wisdom podcast." I go, "Who's that?" Because I didn't know. And then I go, "That name sounds familiar." And I got to looking at my email and my calendar. Oh, I'm doing an interview with him this Friday. That was about 6 months ago, right? And then I've done a second one with him in person where I was in Austin about 3 months ago. But you know what? I think, and so now I watch more podcast stuff. I'll watch like Peter Attia, because I like kind of his male health related stuff. I'll watch Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO, Chris Williamson's podcast. I mean, there's a lot of good ones out there. And I think one of the most just engaging interviews I've seen in a long time was Chris Williamson and Tim Ferriss, just basically having a conversation. Now, here's 2 men that, have risen to a pretty decent stature, with Tim Ferriss probably being, more of a household name than even Chris Williamson. But Chris Williamson's blown up in the last few years. And here was 2 guys talking about their fears, their insecurities, their relationship struggles, therapy, good books, and they were talking fiction books. I'm going, yay, fiction. Men don't read fiction anymore. Men just read coaching books, 10x books, 10x your life, 10x your business. We're all about self-improvement. And they're talking fiction books. And I'm going, oh man, I could just sit and listen to two men being real, sharing their struggles. And these are people that, most people would go, I'd love to have their lives. I'd love to have their success. And they're just talking about their struggles and the therapy they've been to and what they're looking for in a relationship and what happened, went wrong in their last relationship. And that's just real shit. That's people being real. And I can see why they both have had the success that they have, because they're willing to get out there and struggle with their own shit and be real about it and talk about it and talk with other people in real ways. And, yeah, I can watch that. I can listen to that. For me, that's engaging and entertaining. I felt like I knew them, like they were my buddies watching this.
I mean, that's the kind of thing I want. I want this podcast, the kind of guys to go and listen to his podcast, because I want to be that kind of podcast that people kind of come and listen to and go, that really helped me. I don't really mind the money, the fame, whatever. I'd rather be that person to actually give back, because I wasn't always a nice person. I was a bit of a dick in times, and I've done bad things. I've hurt probably people and stuff. And if I could give back now, and that's a toxic shame I'm probably dealing with, and that's why I like the book, because it really opened me up into thinking, etc. And I like how you even go on about self-care in the book. You talk about doing something for yourself, take something off this list and go and do it at least once a day. Do you find that's the biggest struggle a lot of men have? They kind of burn themselves out by opening themselves up, but don't know how to deal with the feelings and the challenges and the stresses and all that it brings, and not look after themselves.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk about self-care. And then as my own personal self-care, we'll maybe wrap up with that, because I have to take care of myself before the next interview I do in a few minutes.
I was going to say, we've got about 10 minutes.
I'll take good care of myself. I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge, this whole self-care issue. When I do my workshops, I teach a lot about what I call cooperative reciprocal relationships, of how we consciously surround ourselves with resources to help fill our bucket, to help get our needs met. And those resources can be people, just friends, acquaintances. They can be professionals. They might be your accountant, your attorney, your therapist, your coach, your personal trainer, your chiropractor. It can be practices you do every day, your meditation, your morning pages, your trip to the gym, your walk in nature, and they can be packs. They can be groups of people you have in your life. And so I walk guys through a 3-step process of both looking at what resources they have in their life to fill their bucket. Second part is, what resources could they use? Do they need? Kind of like, when I said I need a men's program, it was in the process of teaching that unit in a workshop that all of a sudden a men's program showed up. Just back in April, the workshop I was leading here, I said, I was doing that same practice. Page 2, I need a nutrition coach. 2 guys in the workshop said, I know a nutrition coach. One was a personal trainer, the new one. Another one's a guy that was working with a nutrition coach. I hired that person's coach, former professional competitive swimsuit competitor, and a master's degree in gerontology. So she works with old guys like me. And I've been working with her for 3 months. And like I said, I'm as lean and as strong and as healthy as I've been in 25 years. 25 years ago, I did a 90-day Body for Life competition, 9% body fat. I was 25 years younger then too. And so I added a nutrition coach to, my resources in my life. Page 3 of this practice is what do you have in your life that is no longer either cooperative or reciprocal? What do you need to either have a conversation about, cut out, just move it out of your life because it doesn't serve you? This is an ongoing process. I tell guys, do this every 6 months, this little practice. And because we spend so much of our time giving to other people. It might be giving to our boss at work. It might be giving to friends. It might be giving to a partner, giving to our children, just giving. And we're giving from an empty bucket, because our bucket needs filled daily. I get up and I start my day before anybody else in my house is up. I go sit. Yeah, here I can sit outside year round. So I sit at a table that's kind of under a little roof right next to my swimming pool. But on a good day, my dog's down there with me. She's gotten kind of lazy, so she likes to stay up in the bed near where my wife is. I do my meditation. I do my morning pages. I write 3 pages. I read some good reading material. Then by then, my wife and the dog have gotten up. We take the dog for a walk in the park, and then by 9:30, I'm ready to either dive into some work or maybe hit the gym. So the gym will either come earlier or go later, depending on my schedule, and then I'm ready to work for the next 6, 7, 9, 12 hours, whatever the day may look like. But in there, sometimes, like before I got on this call with you, I went upstairs and put a little hot pad over my eyes and just laid on my bed for 10 minutes. I'll do that. I'll take these little breaks where I just go take good care of me. So the more we're conscious of filling our own bucket, taking good care of ourselves, making our needs a priority, the more generous actually we can give to other people, the more we give from the overflow, from the bounty that we have. But giving from an empty bucket will just wear us out, make us resentful, probably lead to addictions, which are just they're junk food. Whether it's watching too much TV, surfing too much internet, looking at too much porn, eating too much junk food, playing too many video games. That's junk food nurturing. Now, video games can be fun. Watching TV can be fun. Looking at porn can be fun. But maybe doing it in a conscious way where you go do it for a little bit and then you're done rather than this unconscious because our bucket's empty because
Yeah.
we're dry. So fill the bucket up with healthy resources. The meditation, talking to a good friend, going for a walk, playing with your dog, talking to your partner, reading, taking a nap, just eating healthy, getting into the gym, things that fill your bucket up. Then you got a lot more to give to other people. And and you can do it for a lot longer. Like I said, I'm 68, and I still have plenty of energy and plenty of drive. And my dad retired at 55. I can, but he had a blue collar job. It was a more of a physical, tiring job. But I don't. I can do this for a lot longer. But I know I got to take good care of myself because I do take care of a lot of people. I've got a home, I've got a wife, I got 2 stepkids, I've got a son, I got a granddaughter, I have a dog, I have hundreds of men that I work with, I've got my coaches that work with. I got a lot of people that I give to, so I got to give to me, and so that's a high priority. So yeah, I think men that can make us really uncomfortable because we think that makes us selfish, it makes us bad. No, it makes us mature and loving, and gives us something that again we can give from the overflow.
It's a good answer because I cannot thank you enough for this book because it started me in a journey where I felt completely lost to now actually thinking I understand where I'm coming from. So I'd like to do a second one later on where I'm maybe along the journey a bit more and I've kind of understood more of the prompts and the challenges and it'd be interesting to see because I can feel a bit of resistance in myself sometimes, going, "Oh, I don't know about that." Oh, da, da. And it'd be good to see how it shapes as I start going along my own journey and find my own safe people, etc. But what do you want people to take from this? You know, is a sort of way of summarizing this because I could tell them to get the book. It's life changing. It's one of the best books I've listened to and read for. I've got about that much
I,
highlighter through it.
I hear that a lot. Guys show me their books. It's all yellow highlighted. Guys will say, I've read every self help book, but this is the first one that spoke to me. Now, if you're not a nice guy, it's not going to resonate. But if you're a nice guy, it connects all the dots. You finally go, oh, it all makes sense now. All those other self help
Yes.
books, I just read them, felt inferior, felt like I'm doing that, or I'm not good enough, or I just try harder. They read No More Mr. Nice Guy. Oh, they relax into it. So, yeah, I, I'm proud of the book. It's most books don't stick around very long. It's been around 20 plus years and still going strong. My royalty checks get bigger every year, so it's
Very well deserved.
still helping a lot of people, men and women around the world. I'll just keep going back to, you know, don't overthink this. Don't try to figure out some big plan to start But yeah, if you haven't read the book and it resonates, get the book and read it. Go watch. I've been talking shit about social media and YouTube. Go on YouTube and watch videos that I've done. If it resonates with you, go find a men's group, a men's program. Check out Integration Nation, integrationnation.net. Go to my website, drglover.com. I have courses, I have workshops. Integration Nation is my legacy. It's what I hope to leave behind, a worldwide men's program where men can go do this work with other good men and not feel alone, no matter where they live in the world. So there's resources out there. Don't do it alone. Challenge yourself to go find a friend, 2 friends, a 12-step group, a men's group, Integration Nation, whatever. Just go find some other men and risk being vulnerable. Take a chance, right? Reveal yourself. Go slow with it. Check and see what the people do with it. Do they handle your what you reveal well? Are they reciprocal in what they reveal? Are they supportive? Go slow with it, but go do it. Go do it.
I love it. And for how can people keep in touch, follow along the journey? You've mentioned the group, but how can we, are you taking clients on? How can we find you on social media? Perfect time.
You probably won't find me on social media. Now, Integration Nation does have social media accounts, and I do have a YouTube channel where I post videos on. Just started that a few months ago, and we just reached 1,000 subscribers yesterday, so that was fun.
Congratulations!
Fun. But I'd say go to drglover.com, drglover.com to find my courses, my podcast, my workshops. Go to integrationnation.net and just check out my men's programs, a membership program. We have over 55 calls a month that men in the program can access. And just I've got a lot of great certified No More Mr. Nice Guy coaches working with me. I'm on a call every single week, every Thursday. Like I said, we have great people that come on the show. Dr. Warren Farrell recently, Dr. Robert Augustus Masters, John Wineland. My mind just went blank on a good friend of mine. I had Sean T. Smith on there. Like I said, I had Mark Manson 2 weeks ago. This week was, as I said, Orion Taraban. Connor Beaton, that's what I was trying to think of. He's been with us. Those are all great people. Be great on your show. But, so we just have this vibrant community. It's growing. It's fun. We're supportive of each other. So, yeah, drglover.com, integrationnation.net.
Well, that's it for another week, and thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.